Now that we have everything assembled, we're going to start making the ice look more like how we would expect ice to look when it's actually being rendered. And to do that, we're going to have to do a few things. First, we're going to have to make some little tiny air bubbles that form inside of it, and then we want a little bit of a volume in it to make the ice look a little cloudy. We'll also have to alter the surface a bit, just put some noise on it so that we can drive that into a shader and make it look cool. So we'll start with, let's do the bubbles. So I'm going to create another merge, so object merge. Should be ice point cloud. So we're going to bring this in. And we want to go back here. And then what we're going to do is, as this grows, we're going to be copying points onto this. So I'm going to do a time shift. And so we know that this stops around frame 1100. So we're going to make sure that this isn't moving. We don't need it to be moving, we just need these points so that we can instance stuff, but the bubbles themselves will be locked in place. Cool, so we got time shift here so that this is all at the end of its animation. And then we need to do kind of what we did before when we were creating that cutter geo that melted the ice. So we need to create a point wrangle. So we're going to do if, and then we're going to create our rand function. So if rand ptnum, and then we're going to just make a random seed here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is greater than, and then we're going to have our cull here. Remove 0.0 ptnum. Okay, so let's see this here. Obviously this defaults to 0. Let's see what we can do. I'm going to do, let's try 0.00015. So that's a decent amount of points, and I think that'll be fine. We don't need a crazy amount of bubbles. And so then another thing we're going to do is we'll set p-scale on this. We don't want too many point wrangles. So we're going to do at p-scale equals fit rand ptnum min max. Same old thing as always. So we're not going to be able to see anything different right now. So one of the things that we are going to want to do, first we'll just do a copy to points. Whoop. And we'll be able to see what's actually going on here. So sphere, let's see how big these spheres are. So they are 0 size because that's what they default to. So we're going to make the minimum 0.001, maximum 0.0075. Yep, that looks good. So we're also going to turn these spheres into polygons because we are going to noise them. We don't need much frequency though, because they're just bubbles, they're tiny. We don't need a lot of mesh detail on those because you're never really going to see. But if you see here, if we merge these two, you know what, we'll just do a view flag. So we can see here, well, these are already out ahead of everything because we froze this in the time shift at 1100. And that's all good. Because what we can do is we can do another thing that we've done before, which is we are going to take a group And then we're going to say, we're going to take this and get rid of base group, ice grow. We're going to name our group. And then we're going to do keep in bounding regions, bound objects here. And then for group type, we need to make this points. So it's hard to see what's going on here with this template. All right. So now what this should be doing is anything inside of this group should be in ice grow. So let's just create a blast here. And say ice grow. Yep, so now anything inside is in its own group. We'll put this here. So now if we look at this, we can see, okay, so everything inside goes away. And then everything outside of it is there. We want the opposite, so we want this. There will be an issue with this as well, though. So once this is all grown, so we've got to here, we're going to look at the spheres now, and we can see that some of these are protruding out the edge. And an ice bubble wouldn't just be hanging out. We need everything to be contained within the volume of this ice. And it just doesn't make sense to have bubbles poking out the side. It's just wrong. So we need to make a peak, and we need to alter this geo. And so now we need to make a distance of something like, let's try -0.1. So that's way too much. So something like that looks way more correct. So we can see the difference here. We might even be able to take it a bit farther just to make sure. So that's probably too far, so let's do 1.5. Yeah, 1.25. Something like that. So now if we go here, we can see that should for the most part handle it. I don't see anything poking out the edges. I saw one over here is poking out. And normally I'd say, well, we can do a bunch of stuff to make sure that even this doesn't happen. However, delete. Now it's gone. If that's the only one that's the issue, then whatever. So now we got bubbles in here, and that's looking cool. But they're too perfectly spherical. So we're going to head back to Magic to get our trusty point vault, because I don't want to have to be making noise all the time. So we'll put this here. All right, so we want a frequency of, let's say, we're going to go high on this. We're going to make it something like 19 or 20. We'll do 20. We're going to have to obviously decrease the amplitude. So we're going to make this like 0.035. And yeah, I think that looks much better. These aren't perfect spheres. We have some real strange bits here that I think look more realistic. And yeah, I think that's really all we need to do to these. And I still don't see anything poking out. So yeah, I like that. So another thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take these, give them normals. We want them to be point normals. but we want to reverse them because these are going to be on the inside of stuff. So we want the normals to be facing inward because inward is actually what we would consider the outward facing part of the geo. It's just inside the geo. I know that sounds crazy, but picture this as an empty hole and not geo, in which case the surface would be on the inside facing inward on itself. Again, I know it sounds weird, but that's just how it is. And so now if we merge these two things, just gonna swap these. So we can't see that there's bubbles, but if we go in here, we see, yep, now we have some nice bubbles. And so what is nice about this is so that this will grow out. And actually, I think what we'll need to do is we'll need to put this here, because this will eventually need to shatter and grow. So if we go farther down here, so when this is actually starting to shatter, we don't really need the bubbles to come up with it. We just want them to be left behind. And so it's going to change our group. So as these float up, all these bubbles down here are going to go away. And it should look pretty seamless when this actually starts to move. So I'm just gonna, for the sake of clarity, move all this stuff down, do a little bit of housekeeping. I like to keep my network as organized as I can. I like straight lines. Okay, looking good. Gonna save it. And so then next what we need to do is we need to move on to creating a volume inside this to give it a little bit of cloudiness. So what we're going to do is we're going to reuse the points that we have here. And we're going to reuse the same type of group that we made before. So I'm going to make a group. And we don't need to cull anything, so we're just going to do it from up here. And we don't really need a peak either. So we're just going to do this, and we're going to do, just make a cull group. Just make it so it's not the exact same as the other group that we have. So then we're going to disable base group, keep bounding regions, points for bounding object. Now we're going to go back in the timeline. All right. So something screwed up here. What could it be? Up. Again, this should be points. And then now we should start having points grow out here. So that's good. Another thing that we're going to do is we are going to create some noise. And we are just going to steal from this one. We don't need to go all the way back into the other object. I'm going to make this black. And then our noise, we aren't going to be adding to points, we're just going to be creating color. So everything should be pretty much how we need it. We're going to change the frequency here. It's way too high right now. We're going to bring it to probably 7, I think is a good number. Amplitude, we're going to actually significantly increase, and then also we need to go in here. And where we have 3D noise, we want it to be 1D noise. We're going to increase the amplitude to 2.8. Yeah, something like that should work. So we're going to do a cull here, so we're going to do a point wrangle. Going to do if at cd.x is greater than channel float cull remove 0.0 pt num. So this now leaves us a bunch of points, and we're going to call, let's do 0.215. And we don't need to be seeing this as a template. So yeah, this is probably gonna work. But another thing that we need to do is, since we're working off of this point cloud that we've already created, we're going to have a bit of grid down here. We can see some uniformity in the way this stuff is positioned, so we have to do what we have done a few times before. So we're going to do a VDB from particles. And so we are going to make voxel size 0.005. And then, of course, minimum radius, need to change it. So this is giving us our VDB. And we're going to do a convert VDB This should give us some geo. So we're going to do a couple more things. We're going to do a close. So we're going to do an SDF reshape. We're going to close it. That'll make it more blobby, which I like. And then we're going to erode in just a little bit, just to make sure that nothing is poking out of the edges. So if we do SDF reshape again, we'll erode. Something like that should probably work. I like this. So then this will be turning into a volume. We just need to now do points from volume. And we need to scatter a bunch of points into here. So we're going to do point separation of 0.00175. Let's see how this works. So if we middle mouse, 13 million points, that's a decent amount. We're going to do another point wrangle. We'll see if we need this many points or not. I suspect probably not this many. But maybe we do. I'm not sure. We'll have to look at the render. But one of the things is I'm going to take this. I'm going to say, I'm going to create a float and say density equals cd.x times mult. I'm going to do this here. And then we are going to, actually, I don't think we need CD at all in this right now. So I'm going to get rid of that. And then we are going to do volume rasterize attributes. And we have density. We created that. So we're going to do density up in attributes. Another thing that we'll need to do is that we're going to create the, so right now it says mult. This is just what we're going to set as density. So I'm going to set it at 5 for now, which might seem high, but hopefully it's not. But it's got to think about it. So I'm going to try to kill this. So the reason that's happening is that the particle scale is way too large. So it's covering way much more area than we were expecting, especially when we have a lot of points. So instead of a particle scale of 1, we're going to do a particle scale of 0.003, but then we will be able to increase the voxel density, so it'd be 0.0025. So now let's get out of manual. There we go. So the density probably is too much, so let's just bring it back down to 1. And so this doesn't look like much here, but then when we render this inside of the ice crystals that we have, I think it's going to look really interesting. So I'm just going to make a null, and we'll deal with the shading of this outside of this object. So we'll do ice cloud. We'll do out ice cloud. So we'll go here, do object, sorry, geo, ice cloud. All right. So with that built, we now have bubbles inside the ice. We've got a volume inside of it. So I think what we can do now is we can start rendering things and see how it looks.